Welcome to the stream, everyone. I've posted a lot today, that's why I didn't post anymore. Sorry for the echo. I don't want to get spam filtered. I'm a real person. I do real things. I build software. I'm a web developer for 10 years soon. I've worked on dozens of projects, seen hundreds of websites, analyzed back-end things, front-end things, implemented all kinds of features, architectures. I know my shit, okay? I know my shit. And I know some of y'all probably saw the video and said, what you are talking is bullshit. But that's not at all true. I did the math. I analyzed the architecture and I understand what I'm talking about. All right. I don't want to be always super serious, but today I realized something very important. In order to have a maximum impact, I can't work alone. I will never reach those goals if I work alone. I need somebody to help me, with eyes, with funding, collaborations, relationships, expertise, business expertise, right? And the thing is, I want to work with somebody else. I want to do this with somebody else. That's why I'm reaching out to those people, all right? And that's why I'm trying to get attention towards my idea, which is real, which is very real, okay? And I'm gonna go through the video that I posted today, statement by statement, and tell you exactly what I'm talking about, all right? So that when you watch this later and you see this is the first post after those videos, you can understand where I'm coming from. But also read the article that is pinned on my account, because that is a great introduction. All right. What I talk about in the article is basically 10% of what I see possible. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But what I talk about in the article is very much front-end related. And there's an entire other side of this, which is back-end related. And today I made another really important realization, that efficiency, sustainability, and accessibility are all the same things, right? Because once something is very efficient, then it becomes sustainable. And when it becomes sustainable, it becomes accessible, right? And when it becomes accessible, it helps the efficiency, and so on and so on. It's just a circle, right? And in order to make this as impactful as possible, like I said, I need to reach out to those people. I need to reach out to big people that can help me get this to the point where it needs to be to have that impact, right? And what I said in the video, yes, it's big. Yes, it's optimistic, very much so, but it's all real, okay? And it's not even that crazy, right? But I'm going to go through it statement by statement now and tell you why everything in that is real. All right. So the first sentence that I said is, I found a way to make websites 90% smaller, right? And that is very true. And if you go to my X account and you look at the post that I reposted right before I started this live stream, you can watch a demo of me showing a front-end architecture that utilizes the browser in a way where the website itself is 90% smaller than it was before. All right. So that is 100% real and proven. Okay. It may not be 90% for every website, but that is, like I said, the front end of it, the front end architecture, and it's not everything that the website encompasses or all the traffic that the website has. Okay. This the another thing to the 90% is that 90% on the front end is great. It's not bad, right? It's fast. But what's even crazier is that we can save 70% of the back end, right? And that number also might seem insane to you. I could break it down in detail. I don't want to right now, right? But basically, what I'm talking about here is shared infrastructure, right? And this is nothing new. This is not crazy, right? It's just combining it with other aspects of it. It's a completely new picture and a new vision for how things should work together to create a more efficient, all-encompassing thing, right? And I'm trying to explain this as easy as I can, but without getting technical. I could get very technical right now, but I don't want to, because it's not what most of you would understand, and I would just be rambling and scratching on paper, and maybe I'll do that at some point with somebody else that is more technical, but not right now. Okay. But the keywords are shared infrastructure, right? Because only then we can reuse data, we can reuse infrastructure, scale it as a shared infrastructure, not duplicate, infrastructure, right? Shared infrastructure. It exists in other industries, right? Just not in this one. But it's very much a possibility, and in my opinion, it's an inevitability if we want to scale to those billion users that may have constrained network environments. Okay. The next sentence in my video was, this optimization would save billions of dollars for network providers, companies, and users. That is also absolutely true, right? The costs of operating, databases in data centers and servers in data centers, for trivial functionality, is incredibly high, right? It's incredibly high, and it could be solved with shared infrastructure that it closely works with browser APIs. And yes, it would save a lot of overhead, network overhead, right? Because if you send 10 requests to different APIs, right? Whether it be for a UI framework or for authentication or for analytics, right? If you simplify this down to 2 requests, right? You immediately reduce to 1 or 2 requests, right? You immediately reduce the amount of network overhead by a tenfold. Now, if you scale this to most of the websites, most of the web traffic, right? Yes, you get to $1 billion savings just in network overhead that would be completely eliminated, right? And then you could also cache those requests, right, across apps, because the browser now is authenticated instead of the individual app, right? But I'm going to talk about that more later on in a second. For companies, it would save billions of dollars, because the operating costs of having all of these services that are now fragmented, email services, authentication services, database services, message queue services, analytics services, having all of these fragmented service providers means that everyone wants to have a fee, right? Everyone wants to have that cherry on the sundae, and it amounts up to huge amounts of money that people need to pay to run a SaaS business, run an app, run a web service, right? And with shared infrastructure, the margins would be different. You know, you would not pay so much money for all of these services, but you would pay a certain amount of money up front that, you know, finances all of these services. And then you would have different tiers and so on. And overall, it would be a lot cheaper. Mainly also because it would be so much easier that if it's shared infrastructure that is very integrated, right? That you don't need to hire 10 different people to operate all of these services, because now it's all unified in a shared interface, shared infrastructure. So now it becomes so cheap to operate it that, yes, at the end of the day, you will save like more than twice the amount of money. You know, it could be 10 times the amount of money that it is cheaper to run and operate shared infrastructure rather than fragmented infrastructure, which is complicated, right? And which needs to be maintained and configured and all of that, right? And then it would save billions of dollars for users, right? How does that work? Well, users would require way less data, right? So the data plans would become very, very affordable and cheap, you know, and you could literally, you know, run this on 2G connection, right? Because now it's so efficient that you don't need that gigabyte connection, you know, not at all. And you can run it in rural areas, you know. Very much possible. Very much possible. Ambitious, but very much possible. Um, and the impact on the product margins, you know, what the app costs or what the service costs, that is not predictable, right? But a service or an app might become significantly cheaper because it can reach more people, scale more, upsell more. So now it becomes very cheap for users, and that is not predictable how much that impact will be, right? Because companies will have the chance of either lowering the margins and reaching even more people. Companies, by the way, network infrastructure providers, and, you know, software companies, they will continue to exist. You know, they will continue to flourish actually, because now they have a way larger user base if all of this is more efficient, right? And the services like Cloudflare, like Vercel, like Redis, right? Those are still running in the backend, right? But now they are behind a shared interface and standard that is so accessible that the user base is just way larger, and the browser can use those services way better, you know, or like the shared infrastructure makes way better use of those services, so they save the costs in the data center but get more money for more users, you know, and for more services, for more companies being founded based off of this, because now it gets more accessible and cheaper to run, so now way more companies can use it, right? And they can either lower the margins and reach more users, or they can keep the same margins and just make more bank, you know. um, it's up to those services at that point, but the access to it will just be way larger. So then the next sentence is, I analyzed hundreds of websites and I'm the first person to discover this. Yes, I am the first person to discover the big picture of, you know, web efficiency, sustainability, and accessibility, you know, and understand that it all connects with each other, and that, like, if you get to a point where you can offer those services in a very integrated way in a you know, custom, in a browser that is made for that shared infrastructure, right? Yes, if it scales, it could do all of these things, you know, save billions of dollars. And connect another billion people to the internet, you know. And yes, I'm the first person to talk about this and to push it and to think about this and to think about these optimizations, think about these architectures in that way, and combine the idea of like making it more accessible with the sustainability aspect. Yes, I'm the first person to discover this. Do I think I'm genius? No. I just want to see this become real because I understand the implications for business, the environment. you know I understand that people don't have access, to the internet, and I want to change that. And I understand it because in Germany, in the rural areas, the internet can be shit, right? So I know how it is to put your phone away because the page doesn't load, and I know how it is to develop apps, how difficult it is to develop web apps and connect all these services, and how impossible it is to make them perform well. I know all of these three perspectives. I know how it is to use shitty internet. I know how to build an app, right? And I know how shitty it is to make it perform well. That is very hard to do. It's very hard to get to that experience where everything feels very fluid and native and fast, and you want to use it, right? I know that perspective, and I know that perspective from a user perspective and from a developer perspective. The next sentence is that, according to my estimates, this could save billions of gallons of oil being burned every year, right? This is, again, somewhat analogous to the fact that it would save so much energy that all that energy would be analogous to billions of gallons of oil being burned, right? It would not actually stop oil from being burned, but it would cut the energy usage by billions of gallons of oil equivalent, and that is also true. Like I said, I estimated the numbers. I understand when a page loads, there are requests being made to analytic services, to auth services, to the backend service that runs the data, spits it back out. In the backend, there's a message queue being run, on a isolated infrastructure that doesn't scale with other infrastructure. It's just isolated, it's just duplicated. Even if it's not getting any requests, it's running and it's idle, right? I understand all of these things that need to happen for a page to load, and I understand that if that would be shared infrastructure, that would look a whole lot different. Because now it's not everybody runs their isolated instances, everybody runs their isolated services, but now there's a gateway that is an API for these things, and the browser works together with the gateway in a way that the browser can run its own analytics and send it as a batch thing. The browser can identify with the server, and now the browser can authenticate the user on any page they go, and the user just has to click accept permission, and boom, he's in. And there's never those 5 requests being made. You never need to go to a login page and do those 5 steps and verify your email. No, because the browser works together with the shared infrastructure to provide all of that for the developers. So now it becomes, from 10 requests, it becomes 1 or 2 requests, right? The next sentence in the video was, I want to build a browser that brings this technology to billions of users because around 2 billion people only have limited access to the internet. All right, I will admit it, that 2 billion people number, I don't have proof for it, right? It's an estimate. It might be off by 500 million. It might be off by 1 billion, but it's not a secret that in some parts of the world the internet is shitty and people don't like the web experience. And it's not a secret that some people have only 2G access or not the financial, um, stability to afford a high data plan, you know, and for all of these people, the internet would change. You know, it would be a totally different experience if it feels native. And yes, they would probably pay more things. They would probably get more advertisements on their phone. They would probably spend more time. Yes, all of that, right? Is that always good? I don't know. But is it good that they can't connect or that they don't want to connect or that they, uh, don't see advertisements or like that there's no value from them for software companies? I also think that is not good. So I think connecting a billion people, how do you want to do that with expanding the network infrastructure by itself? How do you want to increase the bandwidth and reduce the latency to reach those 1 billion people that have a 2G connection? How is that going to work? It's not going to work if you don't make the architecture more efficient. The architecture right now is bloat. It's bloat. And if the web wants to evolve to the step where we integrate this other billion people that they don't want to use the internet or they can't, like if we want to get to those people, right, it's not going to work with cell towers and satellites. Like that's going to be so much money being drained, and then who says that the people that live there can afford it? It's like, if you want to get to those people, you have to make the internet more efficient, so then you can reach them and they can use it better. Like, I just don't see it. I just don't see it, how we build all that infrastructure to get those people onboarded when we might as well just change the architecture, which is chaotic and bloated and fragmented, to also get there. Like, it just has more benefits for everyone involved, the people that already use the internet and the people that can't or that don't want to because it's slow, you know? Yeah, I think if we want to get to that next step with the web, addressing all these people, then like the architecture needs to change. That is my opinion, um and the thing is, it can, the thing is, it's not that difficult to, because we know all these moving parts, right? We could find a standard or a framework or like a browser ecosystem that integrates them better, and then we could make this happen. So why would we need to build cell towers if we might as well change the software to a point where that is possible? I just don't see the reason why we should build more hardware when the software is very much possible, right? Yeah, so that's why I'm getting worked up about this, because I've been just thinking about this like for weeks and months, and like it just feels stupid. It just feels stupid to contribute to this massive amount of bloat and chaotic fragmentation that is the web, right? As a developer, I feel stupid contributing to something that you know is nothing more than a pile of bricks, but it's not a house, it's a pile of bricks. Okay. Yeah, that is my video explained for you. And I hope I could clear up some things. I definitely appreciate all the support. I'm going to continue to reach out. I'm going to continue to make my points, and I'm going to continue to think bigger, right? Because I realize that I can't get to my goals by myself. So yes, I will continue to think bigger, and I hope I don't get spam filtered. Right? Okay, on another note, some news that I have for you guys. Next week on Friday, I will be attending a Solana event. At the end of this month, I will attend a React front-end developer event to connect with people and just co-work, exchange ideas, make connections, get the ideas out there, get the ideas out there, and then hopefully people talk about them, and hopefully people realize that, I'm very serious. I'm very serious. I don't I don't joke around with this. Even if it seems a little bit stupid, I don't joke around with this. I really think this could be great for the world, for everybody involved. Like, and at the end of the day, everybody is involved because we all use the web. It is something that affects us all, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, the web is gonna stay. It's gonna exist. Apple is not gonna, eradicate all these websites and applications and services. It's gonna exist. The question is, do we want to make it the winner, or do we want to make it a pile of bricks, right? And by the way, I know so many developers that are fed up with the exact same issues that I described, in this video and in my other videos. I know developers that are fed up with, building all of this crap, right? Just to have a website, just to have a web application, and they are hopeless, and everybody starts to hate JavaScript because it just never seems to improve. It just, the thing just goes on and goes on, and nobody ever takes a real shot at, fixing all the things that are wrong and that are inefficient and that are expensive, so I just don't see another way to scale this thing, to the point where we reach that other billion people, or where we really are the winner as a platform. The web is a platform, and do you want it to win, or do you want Apple and Google to take all the money? I think we should make it the best thing, and I think we can, and we can make it so much better, right, than all of the other stuff. And that once it becomes that, it's way more accessible. It's way more accessible, and there is a way to do it without hurting people's privacy. There is a way to do it where it's not super centralized, where it could get more federated, but the main thing is shared infrastructure and scaling that, and making that very, very easy to use. Yeah, I said everything I needed to say about that. I think, you know, I definitely want to continue to work hard and push hard, but we also have our product, right? Turbine, and I will continue to develop this, make this great, um, and prove, that there are many inefficiencies, and honestly, to fix all of them is like, it's my pleasure, you know, Uh, because I don't want to leave in 10, 20 years when I retire as a software engineer. I don't want to leave the industry the same way I found it, which is a pile of bricks, right? I do seriously want to make an impact, and I seriously think that, you know, shared infrastructure and shared APIs and, browser native capabilities lead the way to that. And that's why I'm gonna try to develop a browser. That's why I'm gonna try to develop this performance measurement tool. That's why I'm gonna try to to do all of that. But alone, it's very hard. And reaching out, even if we get attention through stupid videos, all of that is worth it if I don't have to do it alone. If I don't have to fight this fight alone forever. I'm willing to fight. I'm willing to show up every day, right? But I do want to do it in the best way possible with the best outcome possible. And that only works with other people and with more experienced people in business and more experienced people with relationships and all of that, right? That just makes the whole thing possible, right? If I just sit here and do this every day, like, we are gonna get somewhere, right? But we're not gonna get where we want to get. So that's why I spam a bit. I hope you understand, and I hope that I cleared up all the issues. But if you are serious about this also, and you want to discuss it, and you know what I'm talking about, then send me a DM. I'm very willing to discuss it with you. I'm very willing to exchange ideas, um, nitpick ideas, poke holes into it. But overall, I just really think this is a big idea. You know. All right. I don't want to stream too long today, but it was good saying this because I felt like I had some explaining to do. You know, now I hopefully addressed most of it. It's a bit chaotic, I know, but I tried my best. Tried my best to explain it in a way where people would understand it, would understand where I'm coming from, what the vision is. Yeah, the web is a great thing, but we can make it so much better. And people know that. It's just like connecting the dots between accessibility, sustainability, and efficiency. People don't know that. So that's why we have to push it to them. All right. I'll see you tomorrow with more building. We won't reach out like this every day. We will do it strategically so that we don't get spam filtered, that the videos have a chance to marinate a bit, reach the intended audience. And I'm sure at some point people will pay attention, and I hope that they can't forget about it because, yeah, it's that impactful, you know. Okay. I see you tomorrow. Thank you for supporting on Twitter, and thank you for watching.